So let's start with something fascinating. Did you know that in ancient Greece, what we now think of as madness was seen as divine inspiration? I mean, creativity wasn't just a talent. It was almost sacred back then.
Sacred how? You mean like they thought creativity came from the gods?
Exactly. Take the cult of Dionysus, for example, the god of wine, chaos, and ecstasy. The Greeks believed that losing yourself in a frenzy could unlock this raw, creative energy. And honestly, that's where Greek theatre was born, both tragedy and comedy.
That's interesting. So they thought madness, what we might now call irrationality, was a gateway to creativity.
Right, but it wasn't just theatre. Philosophers like Plato and Aristotle even debated this connection. Plato leaned towards the idea that genius came from somewhere otherworldly, but Aristotle saw it more as a spectrum of human experience. And...
Wait, a spectrum?
Yes! Just like today, where we see creativity in so many forms, they believed genius wasn't this one-size-fits-all thing. Aristotle highlighted how intellect and emotion work together. It's wild how relevant that feels now, isn't it?
Definitely. It makes you wonder if that ancient debate might have shaped how we think about the link between creativity and mental health now.
Totally, and it kept evolving. By the Middle Ages, creativity was tied to faith. You know, divine grace inspiring people to build cathedrals. But fast forward to the Renaissance, and suddenly artists like Michelangelo and Shakespeare were seen as mortal visionaries instead of vessels for the divine.
Almost like they reframed creativity as a deeply personal expression rather than something handed down from above.
Exactly. And by the Romantic era, that's when things really shifted. We get this idea of the tortured artist, the rebel genius pushed to the brink. Madness becomes like this essential ingredient for greatness.
Right, the whole "you gotta suffer for your art" stereotype.
Yes, and it's a stereotype we still wrestle with today. But it's not just about suffering. I mean, a few weeks ago, I went to this incredible theatre festival, all these contemporary plays exploring irrationality, and they pulled so much from those ancient Dionysian roots. It was like a full circle moment.
So those threads of madness and creativity are still shaping our art today.
Exactly. It reminds us that this mad genius idea isn't just a historical curiosity. It's something alive, still evolving with us.
And it seems like the more we understand it, the more we realize creativity isn't just for certain people. It's something all of us are capable of in different ways.
You know, just like we were saying, creativity isn't only for certain people, but here's the twist. We usually think of creativity as something grand, like painting a masterpiece or composing a symphony. What if I told you it's actually something we all tap into in small ways every single day?
Every day, like making toast?
Exactly. Maybe not the toast itself, but say the toast is broken. How do you get that crispy slice? You could use the oven or a frying pan even. That's everyday creativity.
Right, problem solving. So it's not just about making art, it's about adapting, finding new ways to tackle challenges.
Exactly. Creativity isn't some elite skill reserved for geniuses. It's about responding to the world around us, sometimes even improvising on the fly.
That's refreshing, because, let's be honest, not all of us are writing the next great novel on weekends.
Totally, but let's rewind a bit to historical perspectives. Freud, for example, had this idea that creativity came from conflict, specifically internal conflict.
You mean like unresolved issues bubbling up from the unconscious?
Exactly. He thought creativity was a way to work out those darker urges or desires. But modern psychology has really moved on from that notion. Instead, it celebrates creativity as a healthy and adaptive expression of human potential.
That's definitely a more positive spin. So instead of a tortured artist, we're looking at what, a mindful problem solver.
Exactly. And let's not forget how emotions tie into this. Emotional creativity, for example, is about recognizing and adapting to how we feel, finding new ways to express or channel those emotions.
Speaking of adapting, I actually had a moment like that last week. The zipper on my bag broke right before a meeting, so I used a paperclip to hold it together. Problem solved.
That's brilliant. See? Everyday genius in action. It's not flashy, but it's exactly what we're talking about. Creativity finding a practical solution in the moment.
And it's funny how these small moments go unnoticed. No one would call that being creative, but it really is.
Completely. It's a narrative shift. We don't have to redefine what genius is. We just need to recognize it in the little things we do every day. You know, it's fascinating how these everyday moments of genius can go unnoticed, like your paperclip solution. But modern research actually shines a light on this. It explores how these small acts of creativity shape our lives and why they're so universally significant.
Right. Because the whole tortured artist thing still lingers in the popular imagination, doesn't it?
It does. But researchers like Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, yes, the same man behind the idea of flow, have looked into it more deeply. He and others have shown that mental health challenges might be prevalent among some highly creative people, but it's not a requirement.
So it's more correlation than causation.
Exactly. And that's so important, because for every Van Gogh or Sylvia Plath, there are countless other creators who thrive without those struggles. Creativity, it turns out, is as much about healthy environments as it is about individual brilliance.
Which brings us to knowledge ecologies, right? That idea of fostering spaces where creativity can grow collectively.
Yes, knowledge ecologies are like ecosystems for ideas, built on diversity and collaboration. Take open source projects, for example. They thrive not because one person solves everything, but because people contribute as equals, sharing knowledge.
Like the Linux example, ideas flowing freely so that innovation happens faster and, honestly, more democratically.
Exactly. And it challenges the myth of the solitary genius. Instead, it shows that when people work together, creativity actually flourishes.
But what about on a personal level? How does art tie into all this?
Art is such a powerful example. Historically, someone like Virginia Woolf channeled her emotional struggles into transformative literary works. And today there's a growing recognition of how art can contribute to emotional healing, even beyond the artist.
Right, like art therapy, using creativity to process emotions in ways words can't always capture.
Exactly. It's not just about creating something beautiful, it's about making sense of your inner world. Art can help us reconnect with ourselves and even inspire social change. Protest songs, for example, have given voice to movements throughout history.
It makes sense. Art's not just about personal expression, but also about imagining new possibilities for how we live and work together.
And that loops right back to collaboration. Whether it's art or science, the most impactful changes are made when people come together, challenge norms, and find new connections.
So, really, creativity isn't some mystical gift. It's something practical and essential for moving forward as individuals and as a society.
Exactly, and that's the takeaway, isn't it? Creativity is everywhere, in how we think, how we adapt, and how we connect. It's not about being a tortured genius, but about being open to the endless ways we can create meaning and change around us.
I love that. And honestly, it's inspiring to think that creativity is something we can nurture, both within ourselves and our communities.
It is, so whether it's painting, problem solving, or simply seeing the world differently, we're all capable of contributing to something bigger.
And on that note, I think this is the perfect place to close.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this exploration of creativity from ancient myths to everyday practices. We hope you're leaving with new ideas and maybe even a fresh perspective.
And remember, creativity isn't just for the few, it's for all of us. So keep finding those moments of inspiration, big or small. Until next time.